Welcome, everyone. This is Greg Rock, and I'm thrilled to have Janelle Hill with us today. Bpm Institute is once again going to be part of Gartner's Business Process Management Summit Series. This year's event is going to be coming up September 9 through 11 down in National Harbor, Maryland. And Janelle, who serves as a VP and Distinguished Analyst within the Bpm Research Group at Gartner, is also the chair of the event, and is going to be giving us a little bit of insight to what's going to be covered, not only during the summit, but also what Gartner sees as major trends in the BPM space going into 2016. A familiar face to many of the members of BPM Institute. It's always a pleasure, Janelle, to have a chance to catch up with you with your busy schedule. But welcome to this webcast, and we appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Greg. It's always a pleasure to work with you and the BPM Institute.
All right, great. So, the summit is a standby in the industry. It's the event everyone looks forward to every year. We've been thrilled to be a part of it since it was launched. We were in London earlier this year and saw a lot of new content that was being represented. So why don't we dive in, and if you could share with the members of BPM Institute what some of the themes and major trends are going to be at the event this year, we can let folks know what they should be looking forward to.
Sure. Thanks a lot. So this year's BPM Summit will be held in National Harbor, Maryland. That's about 40 minutes from D.C. across the Potomac. Picture there, the lovely venue that we have. And it will be on September 9th through 11th officially. Unofficially, we actually have quite a bit of content, including content from the BPM Institute, on the 8th of September. We call that pre-event. So really attendees should think about dedicating the afternoon of the 8th through the morning of the 11th to participate fully and really get maximum value out of the event. Here is the standard pricing that we charge for both regular attendees and then public sector. And for those of you who listened to the whole webinar today and stayed at the end, we have actually a special discount code for Greg to offer to the BPM Institute members. The theme this year is transforming business through strategic process management. And we came to this theme for a number of reasons. The first one being that in the Gartner client base worldwide, about 80% of our clients, both in public sector and private sector, tell us that they're undergoing major business transformations. And when we've done some research into what's behind those efforts, three things came to the top of the list. The first one is the desire to transform for digital business. The second, the desire to transform to be much more customer-centric or constituent-centric, which I personally think is very intimately related to digital business. And then the third one is kind of a perennial challenge to keep pace with regulatory changes. Any one of those business transformations, and frankly really any business transformation, always impacts your processes in a big way. Usually there's going to be changes to multiple processes. So that's part of what's behind the theme. And the big issue we find also is that even though everybody's doing so much business transformation, about 70% of those initiatives fail to deliver the desired outcomes. Not to say they fail completely, but they don't realize the anticipated benefits. Part of that, we think, is because many organizations, although they're applying process thinking, they're doing so in a very traditional manner. And by that I mean they tend to think about process with the idea of standardizing how work is accomplished in order to really drive maximum efficiencies and cost savings and maybe some productivity gains. And those are all good things, of course, but we feel that in today's economy, and particularly as the world transitions to digital business, standardized processes that drive efficiencies are really just table stakes now. The ante is up, The game is much more challenging, and so we're emphasizing this notion of strategic BPM to encourage attendees to really expand their focus, to really work on those initiatives that most directly relate to those desired transformational outcomes. And those 3 transformation initiatives that I highlighted, really all of them are about growth and then compliance, if regulatory issue is the driver for you. So BPM, a strategic BPM, we're kind of defining that as BPM that focuses on growth, on customer centricity and loyalty, and delivering a great customer or constituent experience, all done in a way that is compliant with your business policies as well as your industry or government mandated regulations. So we really think that by attending the event this year, process management practitioners will be in a position to really defy these odds, defy that 70% less than successful rate, and directly contribute to the success of their organization's transformation by applying the latest in process and change management thinking, techniques, and technologies, particularly organizational change management techniques and technologies, all of which will help them to innovate business operations, really ensure workforce adoption of the changes that you're putting in place, and in that way grow the business. I'm often asked, why BPM and kind of what's the value of doing BPM, and particularly because, as you highlighted, Greg, we've been working this event for years, and BPM as a discipline for driving better business outcomes has been around for 15 years and was known by other names even earlier. So, with that long history and maybe a lot of experience doing BPM, I'm often asked, why should I be doing BPM? Shouldn't I be investing in other things like analytics, perhaps? And my answer to that is really pretty straightforward, I think. The real value of doing BPM is to try to optimize the enterprise performance results, not just functional unit performance results. What we often find is that process improvement projects are limited to the span of authority of a single decision maker. So maybe it's the head of engineering or the head of marketing or sales in my diagram here, rather than really looking at the big picture of what's that cross-boundary, end-to-end, mission-critical process that the enterprise has to do well in order to deliver its mission statement. Now, you may not work on that entire process as your initial project, and frankly, we wouldn't even recommend that. We recommend starting with a quick win. But if you have that big picture understanding, then you can decompose it down into a smaller chunk of work and really focus on alleviating, for example, bottlenecks in a smaller chunk, but knowing how that small process or sub-process connects to the larger picture will ensure that you're not optimizing maybe the function or a department, but actually sub-optimizing from an enterprise perspective. Classically, organizations are structured much like my previous chart in kind of functional silos, represented in this graphic at the far left. And in between those functional silos are white spaces, spaces where no one is responsible, no one has a responsibility to make sure that the handoffs from one unit actually cross that white space and go to the next downstream function. And then similarly, with classic command and control hierarchical organizational structures, we also have white spaces between the layers from senior management to middle management down to the front line. You put that together, and many companies, unfortunately, function like a bunch of operative islands. And this observation is certainly not unique, not even originating with Gartner. This really comes from Gary Rumler and kind of his classic research when he defined the white space problem indicated by my little red marks there. And it's that focusing on your own work within your own operational island, that is very typically what sub-optimizes the enterprise performance outcomes. And so BPM continues to be really probably the most important technique to help organizations break down those barriers, break down those silos, and really encourage much more collaborative working patterns and really getting the collective effort of everyone harnessed together to really achieve those strategic outcomes. So I hope that gives you a sense of what the conference is about this year.
Oh, Janelle, I was glad to hear your reference back to Gary Brumler and his book about managing the white space. Gary was actually the first interview we ever conducted at BPM Institute going back, and some of the things that he covered in that book are still true today and challenges. We see a lot of folks within our community that are having success at a department level and have healthy BPM practices up and running. And I hope with some of the vision that Gartner is sharing with folks as we move forward here, they're able to take some of those efforts to the next level as we prepare for digital business and some bigger gains that are about to come. I was hoping I could ask you just to delve a little bit deeper into transformation. Folks have a lot of different definitions for what they consider transformation or transformational projects. And I was wondering if you could help fill our members in on Gartner's perspective on what type of efforts are considered transformation versus quick wins, versus smaller projects.
Sure. And honestly, even at Gartner, we have endless debates about whether something is truly transformational or not, because really it's the context, right? And depending on your organization, where you are, your size, your skills, et cetera, what might seem like a small project for one organization could, in fact, truly be transformational for another. But let me show you this slide. This is one that the BPM team of analysts at Gartner has used for a long time just to help our clients understand sort of the differences in scale and scope of initiative. So we look at them in these four areas: the level of the change that you're making, the typical scope, the time required to deliver that change, and then the level of governance that you would need in order to manage that change. Whose decision or who has the decision-making authority over that change. So a quick win, in our terms, is a small incremental change, improvement to an existing capability. Usually it's one process and kind of a narrowed process definition, most likely bounded within the span of authority of a single decision maker, a single function or a department. It's typically something that will take you less than 3 months to deliver. And by the way, these types of projects might not need any new technology at all, might not need technological changes whatsoever. Very often, simple changes like reordering the steps or cutting out duplicate data collection or eliminating reports that nobody uses anymore get tremendous benefits in the process just from simple things like that. And then in terms of a governance, it's usually a single person, one executive who's responsible. It may even be one process analyst who can come up with a recommendation to the functional leader who will say, yeah, that's a great idea. The middle column we describe as medium-scaled projects, redesign efforts, or re-engineering is the word we often hear our clients use to describe what they're doing. And re-engineering, I think, is a good word because it does mean a significant change is going on from what the process is today. It's typically a change that's going to affect multiple functions and most likely one or two systems that support those processes. Time to deliver ranges from about 3 to 12 months, again, depending on the size of the organization, the complexity of the changes that you're putting in place. And because these types of initiatives are beginning to cross those organizational lines, you really need process ownership to govern those changes, meaning there needs to be someone or maybe even a committee that will have to come together as a group to vote and agree on whether the change being proposed is in fact a good one or not. And my definition of good is it drives a better business outcome from an enterprise perspective, not just a functional perspective. And then the transformation initiatives are really when you get into kind of sweeping, radical innovation, totally new ways of doing things. And very often in a transformation, you really are throwing out the old and bringing in a completely different way of working. And those types of initiatives are across the organization. Multiple platforms and systems are going to be impacted. They typically will take much more really than 1 year. In fact, I would say that the typical transformation initiative that I see is between 3 and 5 years. And there's the most senior executive steering committee of the company is literally making the governance decisions. Very often the transformation initiative is triggered from the CEO. He or she may designate an individual to be like the VP of the business transformation, and then they'll set up multiple work streams of effort that will have to be coordinated. One will be absolutely the process changes. One is typically organizational changes, maybe personnel and staffing and skill level changes. One is usually around how this transformation is going to impact the financing and the finances of the organization. And there may be another work stream related to the introduction of new products or services. So, really quite extensive scale and scope. Does that help?
All right, excellent, Janelle. Yeah, that's about the best definition I've seen of how to know what kind of projects you're really working on in the terms of transformation. And so that's really helpful, I think, for
in fact,
for
Greg, you hit the nail on the head there, and we define these at the low end, those quick win, those are projects. But the more you move over to the right side, it really starts to be BPM as a program, at least when we're talking about the process element of the transformation. Right,
and that's exciting stuff. And so we applaud companies that are going down that path and taking on those efforts. Well, Janelle, we promised folks a kind of a sneak preview of some other things that Gartner's seeing on the horizon going into the end of this year and the beginning of next. Can I ask you to spend a few minutes on what you're seeing for upcoming trends?
Sure. It's interesting to me, having covered BPM for easily 15 years now, the types of questions that practitioners ask and the kinds of initiatives they have. And in the last, I'll say, 12 months, here is kind of a list of the things that I'm seeing crop up. The first one is a real interest in enhancing high-impact workers' work. We used to call these people knowledge workers. And so a lot of times our clients will call up and say they really have a need to improve knowledge worker productivity. That's the phrase they might say. Gartner also introduced in the last 12 months a concept we call the digital workplace, which is largely around these high-impact performers. And as we go digital, what are the kinds of technologies and capabilities that need to be integrated to support their work? Because a lot of their work is not the typical routine, task-oriented, structured process. So the second trend is exactly that, this recognition that all work is process, and all processes are not necessarily structured and predictable and routine work. In what Gartner calls the unstructured process styles, the three that we see the most are interest in improving collaborative work, interest in improving case-centric work, where case by definition means an individual situation, an individual case, decision maybe. And then the third one is often described as situational work, where the organization might be looking at using a checklist as a way of improving that work, where the checklist highlights activities, information sources, maybe key decisions that the worker might want to consider, but there's no predefined order in that checklist. There might be a suggested order, but nothing's predefined. There's no enforcement that you have to go through everything on that checklist. It's more just a set of prompts to help the worker decide how should they handle the situation that they're in. So that's really quite interesting to me. It really challenges the traditional notion of what's a process in the first place. I once sort of quipped on Twitter, in fact, about is an unstructured process an oxymoron, because most people think process means structure. Related to that, even at Gartner, we're actually changing our definition and how we think about process. And we're just saying, process just means work. It just means converting inputs to outputs. And the process by which we all work is not just the set of tasks and handoffs and information flows and decisions that we make, but the process also includes all the interactions we might have, all the collaborative discussions or email threads that we might have, all the events, which can be disruptions, for example, is an event that very often forces the worker to do something different. An event might just be, your boss changes the priorities of the day, and that shifts what it is that you're working on. All that's work, and all of that is process to us, and we think that the techniques of BPM and many of the technologies and some new emerging technologies can really be helpful in that area. And then the last big trend, and maybe I should have had it first on my list, is this notion of digitalizing work itself. And this goes along with the shift to digital business. What we're calling digitalizing work is really referring to taking physical assets, channels, and capabilities and turning them into a digital asset, channel, or capability. So that the product and the service itself is now a digital offering. And so all of the process and interactions with that work then become digitalized. It's really about the complete virtualization, if you will, of the workplace. And if everything is virtualized and represented somehow through technology and software, then the possibilities for almost endless manipulation of those assets, channels, and capabilities is kind of mind-blowing. And so we're talking a lot with organizations about, in a given business, what could you do to digitalize work further in order to create new value, not just improvements, but really innovative new products and services.
Yeah, I think we're poised for a very exciting next phase, Janelle, as far as, what types of new services are going to get built out and the role that BPM is going to play in helping folks to maximize the efficiency of both developing and managing those services and products. I think it's probably one of the most exciting phases of BPM coming up in the near future here. And of course, with new opportunities are new challenges, right?
Right.
So I know you're going to be addressing a lot of these things at the summit. So why don't we spend a little bit of time of maybe tying back some of the specific things that you guys are going to be spending time on down in Maryland.
Okay, sure. What I tried to capture here are what Gartner calls the mission-critical priorities that our clients articulate to us. And of those, which ones we're addressing at the client, at the summit this year, excuse me. These are a reflection of key challenges from a business perspective that we feel the content on the BPM Summit this year will really address. And so the first one, no surprise, is all around this: how do I transform to a digital business? What does that really mean? What are my opportunities? What are the risks if I don't do it? What does it mean to digitalize the process? How is a transformation initiative different than what I've been doing as a BPM practitioner maybe for years? And closely related, transforming the customer or constituent experience. Because we're close to DC, we are expecting a large government attendance, and we particularly hear this one from government, both at the federal level and the state level. In fact, we have a case study on the agenda from the state of Maine, and the gentleman from the state of Maine will be talking exactly to this issue about transforming the constituent experience by transforming much of how they work internally as well. The third challenge we hear a lot is, how do I modernize the legacy systems I have in order to better support new, different, changing business needs? Again, those business needs might be directly related to becoming a digital business or improving the customer experience. But very often, a lot of the most mission-critical business logic and business rules are buried inside some older legacy system. Many of those legacy systems very siloed, again, not really supporting the process. So we have Yafin Nadis on the agenda this year, as well as a number of other analysts talking about exactly that issue. Then the other one is, which I love, finally, is a broad recognition of that need to break down those organizational silos, the white spaces, cut across those white spaces, both organizationally as well as the system silos, recognizing that our system silos very much prevent sharing of information and collaborative efforts. So that's a big focus on the agenda. And somewhat as we did in 2014, we're finding that the topic of organizational change and driving adoption amongst the workforce of the changes we're trying to put in place, not only systems changes, but behavioral changes, changes in the metrics to reflect the outcomes, new outcomes that we're trying to drive. So there's a lot of interest amongst our client base on how can I increase the adoption of the new ways of working. You know, training 2 weeks before you go live doesn't cut it. And then lastly, you know, depending on the industry a bit, depending on the size of your company, we continue to find cost optimization is a very hot topic still. Particularly as organizations feel that becoming a digital business is going to take some investment. So they're looking to reduce costs and create some savings in one place to free up some money to invest in another.
All right, great, Joe. And, you know, and back to our main theme of the event, transforming business through strategic process management, I guess I don't think folks would dispute that the things that you've got listed here are goals that they'd like to aspire to and some issues that they're dealing with. But folks might be wondering, you know, why is the recommendation for strategic BPM coming now? You know, what is, you know, the urgency that Gartner sees in folks, you know, starting to really mobilize towards a strategic BPM?
Sure, sure. The urgency, quite frankly, is because the transition to digital business is really happening right now. We did a study at the end of last year, and the finding there was that within 24 months, which would take us to the end of really to the fall of 2017, something like 80% of the organizations that we surveyed said they would be a digital business. I personally think there's a lot of optimism in those numbers. I think a lot of organizations will have begun to transition and will be on the journey to digital business. Whether there'll be a fully digitalized business by 2017, I'm not convinced it's going to be 80%. But my point is that the innovation and the creative ideas are happening right now. We've been talking about BPM since 2000, and the initial focus very much built on the tradition of process thinking, driving the cost savings, the efficiencies, and the productivity gains. And it was really, later on, I'll say 2010, 11, really after the financial crisis, that we began to see clients asking about, well, I've squeezed out everything I can do. People are working harder than ever. Now we need to figure out, are we working on the right things? Are people working effectively? Do we actually even know what people are working on? And do we have visibility into all of the requests, very often that our most high-impact performers are getting inundated with? And so on my graphic here, we saw this kind of shift between 2010, 2012, approximately, when workforce effectiveness began to supersede the goals for BPM rather than just efficiency. And based on our recent research survey and the focus on transformation and digital business and customer centricity, we're projecting that by 2017, organizations that are investing in BPM as well as other techniques and technologies, analytics for certain, will really be prioritizing innovation and really, through their innovations, driving net new value, new revenue, new customer bases, entering new markets and really growing their business through very new innovative products, services, business models, partnerships, those types of innovations. So, for organizations that are new to BPM, the pressure's on, candidly, to get a strong foundation in the skills, and then once you have that foundation, to quickly set your sights on one of these more strategic goals and outcomes and a little larger scaled project that would directly contribute to the strategy. At this first level of BPM effort around efficiency and productivity, the benefits that we typically see are significant reduction in cost. Very often there's an increase in customer satisfaction as well, and then very much a faster cycle time, cutting out waste, cutting out outdated procedures, outdated policies that slow things down, can dramatically accelerate the cycle time in your process. In that second wave, the benefits that we see there are more around improving your responsiveness. It might be to customers or to a market segment, and really optimizing your resources. And very often that is the human resources, although it can certainly be financial resources. And the big benefit we see also at that level, when you're really crossing the organizational silos and you have more visibility into what work is actually in progress, who's working on it, what state of completion is it at, and you can get that information both at a work item level or in aggregate, that means business managers can make much better, more accurate business forecasts, which of course Wall Street loves. But at the highest level, really the benefits we're talking about there are truly new business opportunities, growth opportunities, faster time to market, faster time to deliver new solutions. For example, we see a lot of organizations exploiting the cloud now, not just for cost savings with subscription licensing, but really because it gives them a time to market advantage at a price that lets them try new things, and if they work, great. They can scale it out very quickly because it's cloud, because it's elastic scale. And if it doesn't work out really well, they just turn it off. They just stop paying for it after the subscription's over. So at that level also, when you have such good visibility, it also gives you a really good window into possible problems before they really hit. And so with the visibility of what's in the pipeline, how it's progressing towards the outcomes that you want, you have the opportunity then to intersect and inject an alternate way of handling work if you think that it's on the wrong course. So you can do these kind of course corrections to avoid costs and avoid problems later on. So I hope that helps answer the question around sort of why now, what's the urgency.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great
the
point.
The value of doing it.
I think it's a great point, Janelle, and I think it's, it puts an impetus on the organizations to figure out, what kind of skills gap, they might be dealing with the folks that are going to be in the trenches, enabling these leaps in efficiencies and new capabilities. And, we've seen a similar roadmap to the one that you mapped out. I'll talk a little bit more about it on my slides. But I think, that is really the role that the Institute has taken upon themselves to, champion the BPM practitioners and to provide those skills that they need in order to keep these efforts underway. But, I think where there's a lot of crossover between the members of our community and where Gartner focuses is that a lot of those folks come together at the summit. So it might be instructive if we give folks an update on, who should attend the summit and what types of things they might be seeing in the individual tracks and sessions there.
Okay, sure. I pulled out this data from our 2014 event just to give a sense of what some of the titles are and the size of the companies that attend. It's generally the larger companies that attend, but we've seen growth in medium companies in particular. What I think is interesting about this is one of the challenges in BPM is that it's really hard to find the practitioners. Very few actually have a title that has process in their title. But when you ask them to sort of categorize the role, what we find is they tend to fall into these kinds of roles, whether they're from the IT side or the business side. We find that it's at the kind of mid-level to senior IT practitioners, enterprise architects, business architects in particular, CIOs themselves, business strategists. Sometimes we will find in an organization that's been pursuing BPM for a while, they will have someone with the title or certainly in the role of director of BPM or director of business process improvement, or sometimes I've even seen director of process and quality, which kind of go hand in hand. We often find that at the event, it does attract a lot of individuals who would classically have been in the business analyst role or possibly a business relationship manager. The individuals, very often they report into the IT organization, but in many ways they're the eyes and ears of the IT organization facing the business. They're the individuals working with the business leaders to understand what are they trying to accomplish in business, what are their goals, how might technology play a part in helping them achieve their goals. And many of those individuals are transitioning from focus just on technology, but more importantly, really to focus on the process, and then technology as an enabler of the process. As the initiatives get bigger into that re-engineering or transformative type of scope, we find that there's a good amount of content on the agenda, to help project managers or program managers as well. Ideally, we love to see the IT leaders come with their business partners, to come with the business leader who has one of those mission-critical priorities that they're trying to solve. That might be a business operations level manager, the individual who's actually sponsoring the IT project. If there are transformation initiatives going on, as I mentioned earlier, there could be someone who's a VP of business transformation, and they would be a good person to attend the conference to learn what influences the success of a transformation. How is that different than smaller scale projects that they've done in the past? Sometimes we'll see that the process expertise reports into a chief operating officer. So you might still have that director of process and quality and even process analysts, but they report into an architecture team perhaps, or directly into the chief operating officer. So the chief operating officer might have architecture, might have BPM, might even have project and program management. And most likely, if transformation is going on, he or she will have the VP of business transformation reporting to them. So that gives you kind of a flavor. The last one I didn't mention is the head of HR and or an individual who's responsible for organizational change. Again, because about 25% to 30% of our content this year is all around this issue of how do we get people to actually adopt the changes. To give you a view of the event kind of in one slide, I put this one together, and I think I've touched on most things on this slide. I'll just highlight, we always have some guests, not just Gartner analysts. Obviously, the BPM Institute will be there. I have a guest speaker, Mike Massimino, who is a former NASA astronaut and now a professor at Columbia University. I think he's also the director at the Air and Space Museum in D.C. Mike is a really fascinating guy. He is the individual who actually repaired the Hubble telescope in space. So he's going to be giving a talk about how do you deal with the unexpected. When they have disruptive events, when you're trying to dramatically transform how you function and you're facing situations that you've never been in before, what does it take to succeed? So I think that will be a fun and interesting talk. Keith Ferrazzi has spoken at other Gartner events. He's a great speaker, and he will be talking around leadership qualities and innovation. And then we've also included, again this year, the ProSci organization. ProSci is the leading, one of the leading consulting and advisory companies on organizational change. ProSci is the group that developed the ADKAR method of change management. So one of their founders, Tim Creasy, he will be speaking at the event and also running a workshop for attendees. Another big thing I wanted to highlight about the event that's different this year is we have actually included a lot of industry-specific content. So I have 4 analysts representing government, banking, insurance, and the healthcare payer segments, and having specific content around improving processes, dealing with the transformative pressures on those industries at the event. And then just a few resources there listed on the right for attendees. If you want to see the full agenda, that's at gartner.com/us/BPM. Our full brochure is there. You have my name as the conference chair and Kelly Singari as my event marketing partner. Feel free to email either one of us with any questions that you have about the event. And lastly, as promised up front, BPM Institute and Gartner have gotten together to offer webinar attendees a special discount, and that is the code there that you would use when you online register, or you can register over the phone, but mention that code, and I think you get a $300 discounted price.
Yep, that's true, Janelle. So super. Hey, before we let you go, I know a lot of effort gets put into addressing folks that are all different levels of maturity on their BPM efforts at the event. Could I ask you just to give folks a high-level overview of how you guys have organized the different tracks for this year?
Sure. I have some slides on those, and I won't go through them in detail, but certainly from a high level, there are 3 main tracks, A, B, and C. Track A is described as improving business process efficiencies. I would say for those that are new to BPM and don't have a lot of experience, or even for those who kind of want to refresh their foundational skills, I would say look at the content in this track. I've tried to highlight sort of key issues that are addressed and a description of the track here. The middle track B is meant for those who are really focused on those mission-critical priorities around re-engineering, redesigning, and modernizing your processes to deliver greater value, moving beyond efficiency, but into that visibility and effectiveness and better customer experience kind of realm. So there's a little description there of the content. Track C, I always say, is our advanced track, but advanced is open to interpretation too. But this is where attendees would find sort of what I'll call more leading edge topics, driving innovation. We'll be talking about smart machines and the Internet of Things in this track. A lot of focus on reimagining work altogether to truly transform how you operate as a company. This is the track also, though, where we have a lot of focus on organizational change. So that's an issue whether you're a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced. And again, depending on the scope of the changes that you're implementing, getting adoption of those changes could be a challenge. So I'd recommend looking at the content here. And then in addition to the 3 main tracks, we also offer a number of Gartner-delivered workshops. We call that track D. And workshops are longer sessions. They're typically 90 minutes. And the idea is you do some work. We actually give you exercises to work on that hopefully help advance your initiative related to whatever the theme is of that workshop. So you'll see a bunch of different workshops described. If you participate in those, expect that they'll be very interactive. It's not a stand-up presentation. You'll be working with other attendees really to address real-world challenges. I mentioned that Tim Creasy is doing a workshop. That workshop is in this track. Most workshops do require pre-registration. So when you register for the event, take a look at the agenda and sign up for workshops that are of interest to hopefully ensure that you get a seat. And I think that's kind of everything I was hoping to share. Thank you very much, Greg, for the opportunity. Thank you to everyone listening today. I hope to see you there. Stop and say hello when you see me in the hallway and let me know that you heard about the event from this webinar. That'd be great. And I'll turn it back over to you, Greg.
All right, Janelle, thank you so much. And just as a reminder, as Janelle mentioned, BPM Institute is going to have 2 half-day seminars that are going to be kicking off the event on Tuesday the 8th. So if you're planning on attending the event, you might want to come in that afternoon or that morning. And I'll talk a little bit more about those specific sessions later. But those sessions are included in the overall conference fee for the event. But you do need to sign up in advance. Both of those sessions were very heavily attended, in Las Vegas last year. And so if you've been thinking about taking training or are interested in what a personalized training roadmap would look like, we would encourage you to come down and meet with us on Tuesday. We'll also be there through the rest of the event, and we'll have a tabletop during the event, and I'll be there personally, so we'd love to meet as many of our members as possible. And for those that are thinking about certification, we're going to be hosting the exam at the event on Friday after the main sessions break. So now I'd like to shift gears, and we've talked about a lot of where BPM is going and the role that BPM is going to play in transformation projects and upcoming developments for certain companies. But where the Institute fits in is that we're essentially providing education and training programs to either help you develop these skills on an individual basis or to provide these skills to your team internally to enable a lot of these great things. You know, the Institute has been around for 13 years now. We've been delivering training for 12 out of those 13 years. And there's a program that we developed called Corporate Membership. We have almost 600 companies that are in that program now. And these are folks that have had the Institute come in and built training roadmaps for their teams. And so some organizations have been at this for quite some time. We've also had a record number of new corporate members getting started this year. And so the most important thing is to take that first step to get started, and we have the ability to give you some customized recommendations and also provide customized training. And so I've got just a few slides, Janelle, that I'm going to go over at a high level to let folks know what kind of services and support we can provide if they're going down this path individually or if they're looking to take their team to the next level. And here we go. We help folks, I think, to understand what makes up the BPM discipline. We break the discipline down to a number of different finite practice areas. These are things that a lot of your teams are currently doing or skills that folks will have to have in order to keep your continuous process improvement initiatives moving. And each of those dovetails into our training offerings. We have just about 40 courses in the catalog. Earlier this year, we underwent an expansive update working with Andrew Spanny as our editorial director of BPM Institute. We made significant updates and changes to all of the core courses and followed through with having instructors update over 30 of the courses in the catalog. We've also expanded the number of on-demand courses that we have to just about 24. And you'll see a lot of new courses that have been added to the catalog that map to some of the new areas and challenges that Janelle has mentioned, like customer experience, modeling, analysis, and design. We also have a specific area of coverage around business decision management. A whole entire community focused around business architecture and the learning path for that discipline, as well as some new things coming down the pike around SOA, API management, agile development, and et cetera. And so each of these courses, in most cases, are one-day courses that can be taken through a number of different delivery methods. We run half a dozen face-to-face events in North America every year. We also provide 2 different flavors of e-learning, both on-demand, self-paced courses, as well as live online courses. We run about 100 of those a year with a live instructor over the internet via our e-learning platform. And you can find a full schedule on the website. And we do a tremendous amount of in-house group training. And we also provide group training via e-learning as well over the web for groups that may be graphically diversified with where they're based. And that's something that we've been recognized by both a lot of the leading analyst and research firms, our ability to provide that training at a customized level based on the industry that folks are in or current projects that they're on or even the platforms that they're working on. And a distinction with our training is that all the guys and gals that are instructors of our program are practitioners themselves, and so they bring an awful lot of depth to the classes because they work on real projects with clients all the time. Now, these classes roll up into a certificate program, which is an 8-course requirement made up of both recommended elective and recommended core courses that you can customize based on what current training needs you have, or maybe training that you've taken from other places can also be incorporated. And also, about 2.5 years ago now, we released our professional certification. Now, the certification is a great way to let folks know that you've mastered BPM, the discipline. This is an exam that up until July of this year, we had primarily made available at both our brainstorm events and BPM summits around the world. But starting in August 1, the certification will be available globally. We're enabling that through a state-of-the-art remote proctoring partner that we've selected. And so as long as you have an internet connection and a webcam, you are now able to take our certification exam, any courses that you need, and that can be taken at your leisure as you progress through the program. You'll also find different tools on the website to support your efforts as you go. There's a lightweight self-assessment tool that we've built that you can complete in under 10 minutes that essentially lets you know how your current skill set ranks against the 6 key practice areas that we test for in the certification exam. And there's a nice report format at the end of that that also gives you links off to suggested reading and other resources in the industry that folks have found quite helpful. And the BPM Summit is something that we've been a part of since Gartner first launched them way back when. We're looking forward to having a couple of our training courses and the certification exam at this year's event. We also recently completed a Bpm Salary Survey, and we're going to try to find an opportunity to deliver highlights of that at the summit. Would be the first time the results of that would be released. And so if you are at the summit, we look forward to meeting you there and hope you have an opportunity to come by the booth. Those 2 seminars are actually special half-day versions of 2 of our most popular full-day courses. The first is probably one of the most critical junctures of any BPM initiative, focused around process modeling, analysis, and design. And the second is focused on establishing process governance and helping you to stand up a competency center or center of excellence. And so these seminars are happening concurrently, so you'll have to pick one versus the other, or divide and conquer with your colleagues. But again, Gartner is making these available to summit attendees, and you just may want to sure you add that to your agenda before the event. I mentioned the guys and gals that serve as instructors for us. You'll have a chance to meet several of them during the event that week, and they'll also be delivering those seminars. And again, don't forget the $300 discount that we're offering off of the price of the summit. And you can find details on that on the Institute website. You'll see instructions and banner ads on there, but you can simply input that code at Gartner's registration page and be able to take advantage of that. And then following the BPM Summit, to round out the year, we will be in San Francisco at the very end of September. We'll be in New York City in November, and an early plug for our Miami event, which is going to be in March of 2016. So we look forward to your participation in the community. We hope you'll have a chance to make it down to the BPM Summit down in Maryland. And again, I'd like to thank Janelle for coming down and giving our members a sneak preview of what they can expect to see at the summit. And I look forward to joining you down there, Janelle.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure as always, and I hope to see everybody there.
All right. Thank you very much, and that'll wrap it up for today, folks, and we look forward to hosting you for an upcoming webcast. Bye-bye now.